Hello everyone, it's Judy from Coffee Cookies and Books, and what we're going to do today is we're going to review everything that I read in the month of April. So I would really love it if you would stick around. So wonderful that you're sticking around for this review. It's a lot of books, so I'm not going to waste any time and I'm just going to get us started. So what we're going to talk about first are my stats for the month. I read 15 books. Now I did have 3 additional books that kind of sit on, I guess what you would call sort of soft DNF. We'll talk about those. But 15 are the ones that I actually read. 5,323 pages for an average of about 177 pages a day, which I think is quite a bit more than what I usually read. So I did really well this month. The majority of the books, 8 of them, were from authors that I have already read from. So it was actually my best reading month so far in 2025 with an average rating of 3.93. So here's the breakdown. I had 5 5-stars, 1 4.5, 5 4-stars, 1 3, 1 2.5, and 2 2s. So the majority, I think, sit in the upper range, which is what brought my average to almost a 4.0, which I thought was really great. If I hadn't had those, if everything had been 3 stars and above, that would have been ideal. But you know, reading never works that way, does it? Okay, so then there were 6 physical, 9 ebooks. So I read a lot of ebooks this month. I started 7 new series. Wow. But I finished 3. So it does kind of balance itself out a little bit. And I had 2 standalones. The majority were all adult with 1 new adult. And then I had 3 arcs, 5. So this is from the digital, 3 arcs, and 5 were from regular Kindle Unlimited, and then 7 of the books that I read in total, I owned them, so that was really great. So I had 1 fantasy romance, 1 romance, 4 regular fantasy. So when you look at fantasy in total, it kind of includes fantasy romance and fantasy together. 2 thrillers, 2 mysteries, 1 dark romance, 1 suspense romance, and 1 epic fantasy. So we'll talk about the differences there. So that was really it as far as my stats are concerned. Okay, so next what we're going to talk about is my challenges. Okay, so I have several challenges that go with me through the whole entire year. And the first one is the Buzzword Reading Challenge, and I'll put that on the screen so you can see it. And so for April, the book was Such Sharp Teeth, and I did read that. I'm actually covered for the month of May, so do not technically have to select one for May, but if you watched my May TBR, I did actually pick one of the books from this that was down in the fall, and I put that temporarily on the TBR. It doesn't mean I'll read it because May is a very fluctuating month, so we'll see how that goes. Then the next one, and again I'll put that on the screen for you, is the Buzzword Cover Challenge. Now, initially in the cover challenge, in the April for animals, I had Godblind, and I moved that to Celestial because it does fit that. And it has, you know, sort of the sun and the bird and the sun, and it's kind of like a God sort of cover, I felt. And I switched it, and we will be explaining when we go through the books, and put Death by Fire up in the April slot, which you'll notice because it does have an animal. On the female on the left, she has a crow on her shoulder, which you can't really see it all that well here, but it's okay. So Godblind has been moved to June, and we'll talk about that when I do the review part. And in May, Bright Young Women is going to get read for sure. It's on like my for sure TBR for May. It'll be one of the books that will absolutely get read. Okay, so then the next one was the 25 in 25 bingo challenge. And again, I'll put that on the screen for you. So I picked, out of the books that I read this month, I picked 3 that were covered in spots. The first one was, you'll see in the top left corner, is The Best of Us. That is a 2025 new release. That is actually not even released yet. That was an ARC that I got from the author. I actually read pretty much almost all of her books. This one is coming out, when I put down, May 15th. So it has a May 15th release, and I think that it was a fantastic book. It's the 4th in a series, so I'll explain that when I get to the review, because we will be reviewing that. The next one is in the next row down, middle, is Jameson by Anna Hackett, and that is Favorite Authors new release. So she is one of my other favorite romantic suspense authors, and this is a brand new series that she just launched, and the first book that just came out. Second book is already out. Love her writing, and her books are short and sweet. Now that one was an ebook, and it was on Kindle Unlimited, so really great way to read her books. The last one, which is on the same row, on that second row down, and the furthest right, was a color of the year. So when Bree presented the 25 and 25 bingo challenge, she said that you could use 2 different things for the color of the year. So like Pantone has a color of the year. This year it's really, I wouldn't say a color, but it's kind of like a beigey color. I don't mind it, but it's hard to fit books into that color palette. The book I picked was, of course, The Wicked King, and the other color palette that she suggested using is the one that's for the Goodreads yearly challenge, and it's teal. This book just was perfect for that slot, because I thought that was going to be a hard slot to fill. And as soon as I saw that book, I put it in there. Okay, so those are all of those. And then the other challenge that I do every month is I have my 25 must-reads for 2025. And there were 2 of them, and I read one and sadly DNF'd the other one. So we will talk about that when we get to the reviews. And then the very last thing I wanted to just briefly talk about, I did talk about it in my previous video, which is my May TBRs. I will link that below. I also will be linking below anything that's relevant to all of these challenges, but particularly the Escape the Readathon, which I am participating this month. It just started May 1st. This video is going up on the 5th, and super excited. I have so many great books planned, and I hope to be able to maybe even surpass what I read this month. Fingers crossed, we shall see. I did tend to pick shorter books. There aren't like a lot. There are, I think there's one fantasy, and it's like super, super short. So, you know, everything's going to be a really short read, and I'm hoping that it's going to go really well. So, fingers crossed. And again, all the details for Escape the Readathon are linked below. There is Lexi's channel. Lexi is fantastic. She created Escape the Readathon. And there is the channel for, the video for the actual readathon, which is really great to follow. It also has all of the links, because everything's done in the Discord. You cannot find out all the details until you join, pick a team, and get into the Discord. But anyway, okay, so that's it. So now what we're going to do is we are going to get into the actual reviews that I want to do. And we've got a lot, so I apologize. I know this is going to be a really, really, really long video. All right, we're going to get started without further ado, because I don't want to delay this. I have a lot of books to review. First one is The Hurricane Wars by Thea Guanzon. Now, I had picked this book up in February and soft DNF'd it right at the point where chapter 6, I think it was, where Alaric's point of view came in. He's the male lead. Female lead is Taliesin. So there is a war going on between these two factions. One is Taliesin's people and the people that she's closest to, and obviously the other is Alaric's, which is his father leading it. Alaric's father, he wants control of everything, but he particularly wants Taliesin dead because she is what's called a light weaver. Now, I am not really 100% sure at this point, because even in this book, it does not get into the reasons that Alaric's father wants Taliesin dead. I'm sure that's going to come out in the second book. Suffice to say that, there's this war going on between these factions. And then, as a surprise, Taliesin finds out that she is she's royalty. Because as a baby, she had been taken away to protect her, and she went missing. A story we've heard a million times. It's one of the many things in this book that kind of bothered me a little bit. So anyways, she finds out that she is a queen, and she's a queen to a very powerful dominion that I think Alaric's father is frightened of. He wants to defeat them. He wants to control them. And I think he knows that if he controls these people, he has power. Like his father's power hungry. I mean, that's like so obvious. Now, there have been comparisons, the characters in this book to Star Wars. I can't remember the characters' names because I did not watch it. I literally, when it comes to Star Wars, I watched the first 3. Those are the only ones I've ever watched, and loved those movies, but I've never watched the newer iterations of it. So I kind of don't have a gauge to say whether this follows that. What I did find, there was a certain lack of world building. I felt the characters felt a little flat for me. The first half of the book just was a slog to get through. Things finally picked up sort of through the middle of the book, towards the end of it. Now, it turns out that Taliesin and Alaric have to marry. So it's like they're kind of both tricked into it. Even Alaric, he knows this is what his father wants, and that his father is trying to sneak his way into everything, while at the same time, the two of them are attracted to each other. Now, it is a slow burn. There is no real heavy sexual content in it. It is a very light kind of attraction, but even when they're attracted, they kind of hate each other. So I did like that aspect of it because, it felt like it was happening and their relationship was developing the way it should. Overall, it was an okay book. Really sat kind of middle of the road for me. I would say that if you like fantasy with just a tiny bit of like that romantic element to it, that you might like this one. Now, there is a whole map in the front. Thank God there was a map in the front because, so it has like all of the empires down here, and then it has all of the different types of magic down here. And both Alaric and Taliesin weave different types of magic. Hers is Lightweaver, he is Shadowforged. So it is a little bit different. But the reason that I say that it was a good thing that was there is because, first of all, some of the names, like I couldn't pronounce them if my life depended on it. And I just referenced it here and then referenced kind of where they were on the map. And it was just, you know, a lot of these fantasy books have they have made up names, made up terms. And, you know, good example will be that I finished the Crow Prince series. It was very similar in a sense to that. Your terms are all made up, but at the same time, it had enough that you could follow the story. This was just confusing at certain points. Like when they were describing the warships, I'm like, are these things just floating, or are they like flying ships? Like one sounded like a ship that would sail in the water, but it was like in the sea, which is, you know, exactly what this is here. On the front of the book, you can see it. And I found it really confusing in a lot of places. I didn't find that the world building made a lot of sense sometimes. And I just thought it was a bit of a mess at the beginning. There were also characters that were introduced at the beginning as part of the people that Taliesin was with, and they just disappeared. Okay, they get mentioned, but I'm like, what's going on with these people? I don't even know. Maybe they'll show up in book 2. So I rated it middle of the road. I do have the second one already. I actually got that on pre-order. So I'll read it. I have no qualms about DNFing it. If it goes much the same as this one, then I'm like, yeah, I just don't have the patience for it. So that'll be the end of that. So the next one is Hooked by Emily McIntire. And I read that, so I will put that on the screen. I read that as an ebook on Kindle Unlimited. And I apologize. Somebody's hammering something out there. It just started. I'm like, oh my God, of course. Of course it did. Anyway, okay. So my apologies if you hear the dinging. You may not, because I do have noise reduction on the microphone, but sometimes it depends. Okay, so this is supposed to be Hooked is supposed to be the beginning of a series that Emily McIntire wrote that is fairy tale retellings. This one is supposed to be Peter Pan. Now, I have never read Peter Pan. I mean, I know Peter Pan. It doesn't interest me. You know, I watched the Once Upon a Time, and I loved that show. And you know, when they got to the island where Peter Pan was, I hated that part of it. So it was like, so I waited until they got home. I'm like, the only good part of that was they met Hook, but outside of that, I did not like that. So I didn't like this book, not really. I mean, I read it. It was romance. It rated lower than Hurricane Wars. So there's Wendy, and her father is Peter Michaels. And then there is Hook, who is James. And he is, of course, you know, a bad guy with questionable moral character. Wendy, of course, is a virgin, and he decides he wants her, so he goes after her. And from what I can remember, I'm just looking at my notes here. The only character that was really kind of fleshed out really, really well was James, which made the book fairly dark because he was really dark. Wendy was just a piece of fluff floating around in the air. You know, she did kind of gain some nads at the end, you know, because the end was crazy. That was probably the best part of the book, was the end of the book. And I'd say that, you know, not because it was the end, but because it was the end of the story, and it was just the end of the story was probably the best part. The end of the story was pretty brutal, but the rest of it was kind of like, I don't know. I don't even really remember all that much about it because I didn't like it all that much. Probably, well, you know, if it had been a long book, I would have DNF'd it. It wasn't a long book. It was really short and a very quick Kindle Unlimited read. And I will say I will not be carrying on in the series because I didn't like it. Now, you know, it's just personal taste. And I think that I do not like fairy tale retellings. Okay. And I don't know why that is, but I've read a few, and you know, they do tend to be romances and not even just fantasies. I've read like regular romances like this one and just don't like it I think it's silly. Anyway, yeah, I just does not appeal to me. So I should know better, but I read it anyway, and it's like one of those oh well moments, you know. It was okay. I guess probably the best thing after finishing that was I went into a 4-star read, and that 4-star read was Such Sharp Teeth by Rachel Harrison. This is the first book that I have ever read of Rachel Harrison's. So your main character is Rory, and Rory returns back to the hometown to help her sister. Her sister's pregnant, and her sister has kicked out the father. Now, you don't know why until much later in the book. So that comes about later in the book. But, you know, Rory would do anything for her twin sister, Scarlett. So she goes home, even though she doesn't like it there. And she runs into Ian, who was a guy she knew when they were young and in high school, who always sort of had a crush on her. And the book opens with her and him together. They're having a smoke together. Can't remember if it's regular cigarettes or weed, but anyways, they're having a smoke together. She gets in her car and she goes to drive home, and she thinks that she hits something, pulls over, gets out of the car, and is attacked. Now, she survives her attack and wakes up in the hospital after the attack. And of course, as per this, thinks that she was attacked by a werewolf. So at first, you know, she's not 100% sure. She thinks maybe it could have been a wolf, like a wolf, like a regular wolf. But she's like almost entirely sure it's a werewolf. And so she goes about, because she knows the full moon's coming, so she goes about trying to put herself in a position where if she does turn into a werewolf, she won't hurt anybody. Anyways, so the way that it turns out is she is a werewolf, and it continues. It sort of goes on from there. Now, when you read the synopsis to the book says something about how it's, you know, female angst and how a woman can't be who she wants to be, or something along those lines. Like it explores a woman not being able to be who she is or whatever. And I'm like, I didn't get any of that out of this book. What I got out of this book was her trying to help her sister, also trying to decide how she's going to figure out being a werewolf. So it's kind of crazy that way. Like I really actually quite liked the book. She has, you know, great friends that she has in this town. And of course, she's got Ian, and Ian is kind of on again, off again throughout the whole book. You know, and there's some spice in the book, but I'd say nothing like overly crazy. Most of it is just about her dealing with that struggle. So I guess there's a struggle there, but comical at times. because she's kind of quirky, you know. I thought the personalities of everyone in the book really came through, but the only one that I felt kind of was off a little was her mom. But I think that her mom was supposed to come off a little bit that way, you know, like a little detached, because her and Rory don't have a great relationship. Her and Scarlett and her mom are not too bad, but Rory and her mom just have never been really super close. So, and Rory and Scarlett are twins. I forgot. I don't know if I mentioned that or not. So it was part of the book. The other thing that was part of the book was and I think this was part of it, was way back when she was younger and her mom had a relationship with this one particular guy. This guy was a sex offender, and he did things to Rory. Now, that's part of the book. You have to be prepared for it. It's not overt. It's not like crazy on page sort of sexual abuse content or anything of that nature. But it is the idea that he did her, and she was affected by that, and affected by the fact that she felt her mom never believed her. So, or ruined things for the relationship and like that kind of thing. It was the angsty or the mental health part of the book, and I did enjoy that. Anyways, so you know, this was a great read, and I would like recommend it because to anybody who likes quirky thrillery, but also with a good bout of women's fiction in there, like just a good story, family story, friends story, that kind of thing. That was also part of this book. So it had a little bit of everything, which I thought was really great. Anyways, so that is Such Sharp Teeth by Rachel Harrison. And the next book on the list is, what have we got here? Showing Silver by Evelyn Linwood. And this is a fantasy. It is, I guess you would categorize it as new adult. And of course, I'll put the book on the screen for you to look at. I was approached by the author to read an art copy of the book, which I said I would do for her because she's self-published and this is her debut. So I really did want to try it and see if I liked it, and I actually did quite like it. It is not the typical story that I would have picked up, if I'm being honest. It is sort of that young adult coming into who they are as a person, into their powers, who they are in society, like where they fit into society. It kind of covers all of those things. And while the book did not move quickly, so I would not say that it was a fast moving paced book, I thought that the growth that Kira, who is our main character, I thought the growth that she took through the book flowed really, really well. I liked her character, the development of her parents, the people that she became close to, because she has several friends, the man who becomes what they call her master, but not in a sexual relationship, but it is a master and apprentice. So he is her teacher, and he is the one who is going to teach her how to use her powers. So she has these magic abilities that they call arcane, and but hers are natural abilities. These are not abilities that she has to say learn, but she does have to learn how to control them, because her abilities are very strong and can get out of hand very quickly. And you see, actually, and it's probably the most interesting thing, is you really see why her parents didn't want her to in the beginning. They were almost afraid, I think, of her powers at the beginning, and then how she learned to control them, because she even had some fear of them, and how she came into that, as she went along. From a romance perspective, there's a attraction between her and a duke, but it does not grow to anything more than just very gentle. It is like the starting blossoms of a relationship. Really loved that. Thought that was really done very, very well. Just overall, I thought it was a beautiful book. It was beautifully written, and a fantasy, but not a fantasy that was so heavily bogged down with calling things so many different things that you just couldn't follow it. Like, that was kind of one of the issues I had with Hurricane Wars. Never had that with this. It was just like, it was so easy to follow and so easy to read, and it wasn't super long. How many pages? 232 pages, so not overly long. And I would encourage you to take a look. It is releasing May 8th, so it's coming out this week. So that is showing silver. And I think that anybody who likes a new adult, I would give it maybe the tag of a very clean and crystal clear fantasy. And this is the first book in the series. I don't know exactly how many books she plans to write, but first book in the series. So really, really good. All right, so then our next book is Jameson, which I had, I think, mentioned a little bit earlier that it went on my bingo challenge. And this is Jameson by Anna Hackett. So this is the beginning of a new series. It is built on her Hell Squad series, which is one of her older ones. And Hell Squad was aliens were attacking the Earth. They had squads that were formed that were like special forces that were basically, their duty was to get rid of these, attack them back, get rid of them. And eventually they drove the aliens away, but the aliens left a gift, which was basically they left monsters on Earth. So the new group, which is the group that Jameson works with, is called Hunter Squad. And the cities are basically, they're walled off to protect people from these monsters that live on the other side. And Hunter Squad goes out and hunts them down, essentially. So the first book is, of course, with Jameson. He is the leader of Hunter Squad, and with Greer, who he grew up with. Now, Jameson and Greer are the children of the original couples of the characters from Hell Squad. So there's like a line of, I think she needs to do like a biographical chart on all of this. Because I was able to follow it for a bit. I have not read a lot of Hell Squad, just sort of a few books at the beginning. I really kind of need to go back, I think, and I want to go back and read that before I delve more into this one. Because the second book's already out in this set. So I think I want to go back and read Hell Squad. But anyway, so Greer is an engineer, and she is out there working on a dam to make this dam produce fresh water for New Sydney. So this is all based in Australia. And I think the original Hell Squad was also based in Australia, if I remember correctly. I'm pretty sure it is. Anyway, so she is trying to engineer this dam. There's a group of them trying to engineer this dam to make it produce fresh water. And ends up that there is a monster in the water. And so along comes Hunter Squad. Now, Jameson and Greer have been fighting their attraction for each other, even though like their parents are best friends and all this stuff like that. You know, it's like that usual fight, fight, fight. But they have known each other their whole lives. But they kind of are at a point where they're sort of avoiding each other. Well, they can't avoid each other anymore. So it comes together. And now all of her books are romantic suspense. And obviously with a bit of a sci-fi element to them. I would say the majority of her books are like that. She has a few series that are not, but the majority of them are like that. And loved this. I thought it was fantastic. It is only 186 pages, but it is packed full of, like, she gets right down to it. You know who these people are. You understand who they are. You know what it is that they're doing. Like, there's no BS stopping what's going on. Like, it's just so good. Yeah. I absolutely loved it, and can't wait to continue on. But as I said, I think I'm going to go back because I think all of her books are on Kindle Unlimited. So I think I'm going to go back and I'm going to read through the Hell Squad. At least read the first, because I think there's separate series. Like there's offshoot series that are part, but they're all like a group. And there's quite a few books. This woman has written a ton of books. But her romances are typically around about 200 pages. I wouldn't say that they're usually a lot more than that. So they're a fast, easy read. So I think I'm going to go back and do that. But anyways, yeah, if you want to read and you just want fast and you want the romance and you want the spice and you want just a good story about two people, I would highly recommend her books. Okay. All right, now we're going to get into one of my best books, which surprised the heck out of me, is Love Unwritten by Lauren Asher. It's not often that I can say that a romance, a contemporary romance. Now, I get 5-star, like top tier books regularly from my suspense romance authors all the time. This is a contemporary romance, and the fact that this is one of the best I've read in a long time. So this is the second book in the series, and I'll tell you, the first book, I think I rated the first book like 3.5 stars, something like that. It was not, I didn't love it, didn't hate it. I liked it enough to continue on. And the reason that I wanted to continue on was because I liked Raphael and I liked his son Nico from the first book. Okay. And they are the main characters in here, along with Nico's nanny, Ellie. Now, Ellie is not your typical young nanny. No, no, no. Ellie is on the older side, and you know, I mean, obviously Raphael's older than her, but you know, she's not young, and she is she had worked as a songwriter, and the musician that she worked with screwed her over. But this person was also a friend, so it was a really tough thing for her to go through, and also that this friend's boyfriend had, you know, done stuff to Ellie, so made her feel uncomfortable. This book is about the three of them. Now, of course, all the other characters from the other books all come into play in here, but what I loved was the witty banter in here was off the charts, okay? Just so good. And I think it was because of the way Ellie and Raphael and Nico, the way they communicated. Now, Nico, he's 8, and he has retina pigmentosa. And his diagnosis is not great, obviously, and so he has clear vision issues, and Ellie knows that, and Ellie is teaching him music and things like that. And Raphael he's the single dad, and he is the grumpy person, and Ellie is like pure sunshine. Even with all the things that have gone wrong for her. She's still super sweet. They are attracted to each other, but something happens that Ellie doesn't tell Raphael, and he fires her. And I literally, like, I was heartbroken for her at that point. But I got why he did. I just think he overreacted and didn't listen. And I think that if he had talked to Nico properly, because Nico had asked Ellie not to tell Raphael, his father, right? But Ellie had said, like, Ellie basically kind of gave Nico an ultimatum and said, if you don't tell him by such time, blah, 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 all that stuff. So it kind of I was a little heartbroken at that point when that happened. But it ended up where they were supposed to go on a trip to Hawaii, and Nico was like putting his foot down and being stubborn. I don't want to go unless Ellie comes. So I think he kind of gave Raphael no choice, and Raphael hires her back, and then the story ensues from there. But it's kind of interesting. I mean, like, I loved how their relationship developed. Like, I don't even think you got any spice until, like, this is a really long book. It's 600 pages for a romance. And normally for me, I looked at this and thought, a 600-page romance, like, that's insane. But let me tell you, first of all, it read really fast. So that's number one. And because I think also it's formatted in such a way that it reads quick. And the other thing was that the story just didn't stop. It just went and went and went. And I was hooked, and I didn't want to put it down. The two of them didn't even get intimate until probably almost three-quarters of the way through. It didn't move to that point. I just really, really enjoyed this. And it surprises me to say that a contemporary romance scored that well in my mind. It just kind of blew me away a little bit. And do you need to read the first book? I think yes. And the only reason that I say that is that it gives you a good foundation, and not so much for Ellie, because I don't even think she's mentioned in the first book, but I don't think she's actually, like, technically on page from what I can remember. But Raphael and Nico are definitely introduced, and clearly you learn quite a bit about them, but you also learn about all of the other family members, like Julian and Dahlia, who are the first two from the first book, Love Redesigned. They're in that book, and that's their book. But there is also, like, the parents, mom, and and then there's Ellie's parents. Even are really super sweet. Like, I loved everything. I loved everything about the book. It was such a good book. Yeah. So next one is Godblind by Anna Stevens, and I soft DNF'd this one. Can't remember how far into it I was. Yeah, I can't remember how far into it I was. Fair bit. Like, I'm like probably, yeah, maybe not quite a quarter into it. It's grim, dark, epic fantasy, and it had a lot of points of view and a lot of moving pieces, a lot of world building, heavy world building. So I think what happened was my brain stalled on it a little bit, because I had just read Love Unwritten, and it was just like such a great book. I wasn't ready for this one. Like, not even a little bit ready for this one. So as I explained earlier when I went through the one buzzword reeling challenge where I switched the two, this one's going to go on my June TBR, and my June TBR is going to be much smaller. So I don't think I'll have too much trouble reading this one then, and I'm going to try to get through it, because I didn't hate it. It just, yeah, it was just like my brain was ready to explode. So, like a no-go for me on that one, unfortunately. All right, so then the next one we have is a cozy mystery. Oh, okay, and that was on Kindle Unlimited, so I will put the cover up for you. And it is called The Body in the Bookstore by Ellie Alexander. And I thought this was great too. It was really good. It's probably a complicated mystery in a sense, right? Like, but it started out with a great base. Okay. Now, I say that because there are quite a lot of books in series. What they're giving you is she gave you a good foundation right at the beginning. You learn about Annie Murray. She's our main character, main female character, and she works in a place called the Secret Bookcase. And it is in a town called Redwood Grover in Northern California. Sorry. And it so you get a good base with that. You learn who her friends are. You learn that she has sort of a grumpy relationship with a local pub owner who can be a bit grumpy, rough around the edges, which kind of, sorts itself out a little bit at the end of the book, kind of. And then, like you have her, what do we have here? We have Fletcher, who's her co-worker and her friend at the bookstore. We have Hal, who is the owner of the bookstore. You have Priya, who is her best friend and works at the Cryptic coffee shop, which I thought was a really cute name for a coffee shop. Then Liam Donovan is the owner of the pub, so he's like the bane of Annie's existence. So Annie's trying to figure out a way. Annie's kind of like the person who does all of marketing for the bookstore. She brings authors in to do signings and things like that. But business is super slow because this is not like one of those towns that gets a ton of traffic, right? So she comes up with this idea about having a mystery festival so that the whole town can participate. So, she goes around and she talks to all the business, and everybody wants to take part except for Liam because he's, grumpy. So you don't want his pup to have any part of it because, mysteries are just fluff reading. She puts this all together. So we get to the weekend of this mystery festival, and who shows up but 3 of her college friends. Now, in college, Annie lost her sister. Her sister was murdered. And this is something that she's had a very difficult time getting over because her and her sister were they loved detective type stuff. And she thinks that her sister was killed because of that. So anyways, these 3 people show up who she went to college with and who I don't think she particularly cared for in college. I don't think she interacted with them a lot. They were just more there. There was Kayla, Monica, and Seth. And Kayla ends up as your dead body. Okay. So, of course, she's killed in the bookstore. Annie is not a suspect, and I can't remember the reason why, but for some reason, she was not there when it happened. She was not around when it happened. They're trying to figure out, and Annie's trying to figure out, and, it ends up like maybe Fletcher's a suspect. She hates the idea that Fletcher's a suspect. Or she thinks that Seth, the guy from college, that he might have killed Kayla because he had a previous relationship with her. And then there is this author that Monica's representing because she's an editor with a publishing company. And this guy is he's got a bad attitude and he thinks the world owes him. As you're going through, it's like you're working with Annie to try to figure out who the person is who killed Kayla, and it's pretty good. I really have to say it's good. I mean, I kind of had a bit of an inkling as we got further into the book, on who it was. So I wasn't entirely surprised on who it was, but I would say she got me a bit. Yeah, she got me a bit on that. The Body in the Bookstore by Ellie Alexander. Would totally encourage you to read it. I can't remember, like I said, I can't remember exactly how many. I think there's 6 books in this particular series, and I already have the next one up into my Kindle Unlimited because they are available on Kindle Unlimited to read. So then next book is Fragile Sanctuary. Now, with Fragile Sanctuary, what happened was I was supposed to read this in Kindle Unlimited. And I'm smirking a bit because what happened was I started reading it and loved it. Loved it so much. Okay. I can't remember how far I got into it, but I got a good ways into it. And I was like, no. I need to buy this book, and I need to, because I much prefer reading a good book that I love in print format. This didn't go on my reading for this. It's actually going in my, I'm going to add it to my May batch. I have a huge batch of books for May. This book is not long, 360 pages, I think. So hopefully it will, like a lot of what I read in May is going to depend on the prompts that we get. Like we know the prompts for the 6 rooms that are there, but once the rooms are open, we don't know what's going to happen once we get into those rooms, because then you have to read for in the room to try to escape the room, right? Anyway, it's just going to be chaos. So, but I wanted to have a really flexible, super flexible TBR. So I am going to put this one on it, and hopefully I'll get to read it. And if I don't get to read it in May, it's going on my June TBR for sure, along with Godblind. So it's definitely going to go in there. Next is the Jinn-Bot of Shantiport by Samit Basu, I think is how it's pronounced, which is technically a, I guess what you would call sci-fi fantasy. I DNF'd this. DNF'd it at about 50% for the most part. So as you can see, I did tab it up to the point that I read. And I did enjoy certain aspects. You know, the story's told from the viewpoint of a companion bot, and this thing's flying around, and it's going between Lena and Bador, who are the two, they're siblings, and Bador is technically a monkey, so he's a bot, and then Lena is a human. She is enhanced, however, but she's human. So the story goes between them, and I just found that, so you have the bots, you have a city that's dying, like it's sinking, okay? And you have technically what's supposed to be in a rebellion. And then all of a sudden, you have Lena and her mother with some treasure that they were trying to get their hands on, which is a lamp, and they rub it and a Jinn comes out, and all of a sudden I'm like, what in the bloody hell? And that was it. I was done. So, yeah, because there was so much potential, like the whole idea of where it could have gone from there. And I like it was a no for me. And I won't be going back to it. The likelihood is that I will unhaul this. And that will be that. Quite the disappointment, unfortunately. Okay, so technically the next one I read was The Wicked King, but I am going to batch that together with The Queen of Nothing because I did finish both of them. So I think it's better to kind of review them together because they are the end of the Cruel Prince series. So we'll do that. So I'll go on to the next one, which was the best book I read the entire month. And that was Dungeon Crawler Carl You notice how slow I said that? Because if you say that fast, it's like, it's blah, blah, blah. So I said it slow. Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinniman. Loved, like, I friggin' loved this book, okay? Now, the funny part, so I don't even know if maybe I should even read my review because it was just, I put it into words on here. So you've got this guy, Carl, who is like your everyday Joe, right? And he's in a relationship, finds out that his girlfriend went on vacation and she's with her ex. Like, he's like, she posts it to her social media. So he's like, yeah, we're finished, we're done. And she's like, well, I don't have anybody. Will you stay there and look after the cat? And like an idiot, he says yes. Like, okay. So she has this prized cat. Is a Persian. It's like one of the ones that has kind of like smushed in face. And that's exactly how he describes. Should I like read how he describes the cat? Because how he describes the cat is pretty freaking funny. I just need my glasses for this part. Hold on one second. Because I got it marked here because it was one of the first things I marked. So let me tell you about Donut the cat. The cat's name is Princess Donut. But it is like Princess Donut, blah, 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 blah. It's like one of those long names, which is actually not unusual because Donut is a show cat. And whenever animal is showing breed, they have like these long, stupid long names. Anyway, so Princess Donut. So let me tell you about Donut the cat. Like I said, she's one of those fluffy, flat-faced cats that look like they need to be sitting on the lap of a Bond villain. B and I, so Beatrice is the now ex-girlfriend. B and I shared a 2-bedroom apartment, and one of those rooms was dedicated to the cat, if that tells you anything. More specifically, the room was devoted to Donut's best in show ribbons, her best in breed ribbons, and countless trophies and framed photographs of her sitting on a table looking all fuzzy and pissed off while B and a judge stood behind her. B probably had 50 of the pictures. She'd won a mess of ribbons and trophies and photographs pretty much every time Beatrice took Donut to an event, and B took that damn cat to a show almost every weekend. Like, so that was just the beginning, okay? Like, the whole book was like that. Now, okay, so there's this cat. So what happens is he's pissed and he's like, he's got his cigarettes and he normally wouldn't smoke in the apartment. He's like, screw this. So he opens the window, goes to smoke, and doesn't the freaking cat get out? So there he is in his boxer shorts. He throws on a shirt, stuffs his feet in Beatrice's clog, the clog shoes, and goes out to try to get the cat. The cat has gone up a tree. And he's out there and he's trying to get this cat. And the old lady that lives downstairs is yelling at him, and it's crazy, right? And then all of a sudden, all the buildings, all the cars, anything that was a structure is gone, like literally gone. I don't want to talk about what happens to the old lady's head. So, like, gone, okay? And then it's like there is this announcement appears that this alien race has decided that your world is going to be repurposed and blah, blah, blah. And he goes, like they're given a choice. You can stay on the planet and basically fend for yourself, which who knows what will happen, or you can go in and play this game, and all these doors open. And he can see them in the distance, and there's one near him. And he ends up going in there and letting the cat follow him. So this is him and Princess Donut, and they are in this bunker type thing underground. And right away, these funky goblins show up and try to attack them and all the stuff like this. It's like, I can't tell you too much without giving you it away too much, but suffice to say that the book, so it is what is described as lit RPG. So as you go through the book, there are he receives bonuses and he gets achievement awards, and then one of the first things that happens is Princess Donut, she gets an award, and this award gives her the ability to talk. I am not kidding, okay? And she's sassy. Oh boy, is she sassy. I love Princess Donut, okay? So the first book, so there's apparently 18 levels to this game. They have to work their way through. And much like I guess if you played video games, now I have never played video games, but I know enough about them that I know that you get to store things that you might use. So you get to collect, items. And so this is the same. They get to collect all these items and keep them for future use, which of course Carl makes really good use of. And so this book deals with level 1 and level 2, which are kind of like your introduction levels. I mean, the real horrific part of it is he kind of can see the counter on how many people entered the dungeon at the beginning and how many are left by the time you get to the end of level 2. So, which is the whole idea behind it, right? But then, so basically the whole thing is being televised to all these other alien worlds. And he technically, the more people that like you, so this is kind of a bit, has a bit of that Hunger Games sort of feel. The more people that like you, the more people that will give you things. Okay. Now, from what I gather, I don't think that happens till, is it level 3 or after level 3? I can't remember what level it is that you can start receiving gifts from donors. And so he didn't have anything like that yet, and not in level 1 and 2. But yeah, it's pretty, parts of it can be pretty brutal, okay? I mean, like, honestly, so here is what I said in the review. I said, first, let me start by saying this. If you are triggered by anything, don't read this book. Because this book is full of triggers. But if the idea of a guy running around in boxers and barefoot triggers you, don't read the book. He actually ends up in boxers with hearts on them. Now, I'm not going to tell you how that happens, but yeah, boxer shorts with hearts on them. And he ends up barefoot because he loses the shoes. I think he loses the shoes before he enters, if I'm not mistaken, like if I'm remembering correctly. I think he ends up going into it barefoot. And the thing is, he's hoping to get shoes. It doesn't happen. And then, of course, the cat ends up talking, which, is a blessing and a curse. Kind of. And yeah, I've already bought the second book. So these are new. It was previously self-published, and he has been picked up by a publisher. And now these covers are the new covers with from the publisher. And I actually love the new covers. The old covers were kind of cartoonish, and they were funny, and I can see why people liked them, but I actually like the new covers better. The thing is, the books are not cheap. But I did buy the second one because, like, I want to read it, like, right away. Oh, I don't know. I'm probably going to read the second one at some point this summer. I'm just going to put it on my TBR because I want to read the whole thing. I think as of right now, there are 7 books. The 7th one just came out right now. The 6th one just came out in the new format. 7th one, which is the new publication, that came out, but he published it. So what he's doing is he's publishing them in their old format first, so that they have their covers match for people who have the original books, and then the publisher will come out with their version afterwards, which will have the new covers. So right now there's only 6 that have this format in them. So, oh my God, I loved it so much. Okay, so then the next one is a novella that I read, and it's The Exile, and it's from the Bound and the Broken series. So I have read the first 2. I read the first novella and the first main novel in the book, and this is the next novella, and it was an epic fantasy. Now 175 pages, so not really super long, and this actually deals with again, some of the backstory on how certain things developed. So technically, the order you'd want to, like I would say you'd want to read them is you'd have to read The Fall first, which is the first novella, and then you read Of Blood and Fire, because that's the first main book, and then you read, and then I could say you could read this one, or you could read the second main book and then this one. But either way, this kind of deals with Dana Terrace, he's the main character, and Belina, she becomes his friend. So Dane loses his whole family in this whole situation, and what I can tell you without telling you things that happen in the fall, his mother and father die. He has, I think, two brothers and a sister. The one brother is just a baby. They are taken away, and Dane is left for dead. So they think he's dead, okay? Of course he's not. And so he ends up going to this guy, Asen, and he meets another, an elven ambassador, Theron, along the way. And Theron was part of the Order, which was originally eliminated in the very first novella. And Theron survived that. Now, Theron is also mentioned in the very first book. So this is why I said you kind of have to follow them. And the person who Dane ends up with, which is Asen, is that's who he ends up finding because he's looking for him. Asen is the one in the first main book, the large book, who plays a key role in there. So you kind of have to follow them in order. And the idea is that the Order was eliminated. The dragon riders were slain. They think that all of the dragon eggs are gone. So there's some of that. It's very politically oriented type book, and there is a faction that has been sort of leading this whole elimination of all these people. That's kind of where you get with it. So I actually really it's hard to describe because I think I liked the novellas even better than the book. And the book of Blood and Fire is really good, but it's quite long and lengthy, and there are a lot of moving parts in it. And it's the same thing with the next one coming up, which is Of Darkness and Light. Yes, there's Of Darkness and Light and Of War and Ruin. So those are the next 2 in the series, the next main books in the series. So I'll be reading those, and I'm kind of looking forward to really getting into that. I think I put the next book in my mystery selection. So if it comes up, if it gets picked, then I'll be reading it next month. But if not, it's going to stay in there until the next one. So you never know. All right. So then what we have is The Final Goodbye from Brittney Sahin. Now, this is the last book in the Hidden Truths series. I read all of the other ones, and this one was, it was good. It was The Last Friend, which is Ben Logan. So it kind of covers all the guys that were part of the group. They were all friends when they were Marines, and they all got out and follows kind of different directions. Now, what Ben did was he started a security company in Vegas, so he had his own, so he runs his own business. And what ends up happening is he has to go back home to Alabama, because an older man who he was very close to, Ralph, he was murdered. Ralph was the father of Nate, who died when Ben was a teenager. I think he was 18 when it happened. And there was Ben and Nate and Riley, and she was, the only female. And Riley and Nate were dating when it happened. So there's a lot of that sort of thing, a lot of that kind of teenage angst then. And shortly after, basically, Ben left. So it's been 14 years since that happened, and Ralph is murdered. So he goes home, and of course, the first person he runs into is Riley, because Riley was also really close to Ralph. Ralph was like, second father to her. She's there at the wake. Obviously, she's there at the wake. So Ben doesn't want to leave until they find out who murdered, or try to find out who actually murdered Ralph. I think at one point, Riley is actually a suspect. She has no alibi, but it's kind of ridiculous that would happen. I mean, I think he was murdered in his office at the college, because I think he taught a class there. So she's kind of like a suspect. He's trying to work, so they end up working together, obviously. She is the woman he left behind, and she feels like he deserted her. He wouldn't answer any of her emails, and she eventually stopped writing because she felt deserted by him. I mean, it was a very sort of emotional from that point of view, because you could feel her. She wanted to detach herself from him, but it was like she never had closure from him, because he never answered any of her emails. And I think that at one point she sort of blamed, like she, just out of emotion, blamed him for Nate's accident. And in her letter, she apologizes for that, but he never hears that apology, because she thinks he's never even read them, because he's never responded to any of them. So there's kind of all that built in there. What ends up happening is he doesn't end up being the only one murdered. So there is a nurse or a doctor that gets murdered. She gets murdered. And then another employee of the hospital, a guy, he gets murdered. So there ends up being 3 people that are murdered. Riley actually has alibi, and Ben happens to be her alibi for one of the murders. Her and Ben do eventually, they talk through everything that happened, and it ends up that she actually loved Ben all that time, and because Ben never acknowledged her, and that was because Ben knew Nate cared for Riley. So it was like he sacrificed his feelings for Riley so Nate could be with her. And she was with Nate because she didn't think Ben cared about her. So it was very, very difficult. And eventually they got through all of that. The entire part of the suspense part on these people that are being murdered and why they're being murdered and who it ended up being in the end, I kind of had a feeling, but there was still a surprise. So it was kind of weird because I had a bit of an inkling that it might have been this person as we were going through the book. And then at the end, it was that person, but there was still a twist. And it was pretty crazy. I did really like this book. Now, I would not recommend that you read this out of order. I would say that you do have to start with the very first book. Off the top of my head, I can't remember. The Hard Truth, I think, is the first book. It's Michael's story. So you kind of have to start with that book, and then you work your way through them. Otherwise, you'll be completely confused. So you don't want to be confused. So I would definitely go that route. Okay. So next book up is another ebook, another Kindle Unlimited, Death of a Red Hot Cowboy by Mimi Granger. So again, another cozy mystery. This one was, kind of middle of the road for me. It was okay. There's only 2 in the series, so, and I do have the next one, which I will read because I have it in hardback, got it like super cheap. So I will be reading that one. But so this is about Lizzie Hale, and Lizzie is a bookstore owner, and she is a narrator of our book. And the story opens with she's at her store, and in walks the hot cowboy of the town, Brody Pierce. And so he's kind of like the guy that all the women swoon over. I mean, I don't think he's young. I think he's in his 40s. Okay, could be wrong about that, but I think that's where he's at. He comes into the bookstore, and one of the things she sells at the bookstore is these handmade cards, and he buys one of the cards with nothing written in it, and he takes it, but of course he forgets his credit card. That night after that, she goes home, and she lives in like kind of cottage off the side of the house that her aunt owns, her Aunt Charmaine. She notices, because she's sneaking, that Brody is at her aunt's house. So of course, she doesn't know why, because she just happens to see them through a window. And then she sees Brody leave, and then all of a sudden her aunt goes running out, and she's like, what the heck is going on? Like, that's odd, right? She just thinks it's odd. So what happens is the next day, she takes the credit card and she goes to Brody's home, which is a ranch. He has this huge ranch with bison, which is what he raises. And she finds Brody dead. Chaos ensues. The police come, and she's found the body. And she thinks maybe her aunt, like, she doesn't want to think, but she kind of thinks. So it's like, it's kind of funny because she's sort of dancing through all of this through the book on whether or not her aunt did it. So that's number one. And but then it's like there's a bunch of other people who could be suspects. Okay. Brody has a cousin who looks almost exactly like him. There is all of the women that he's dated that are in the town that at one time or another he dated and dumped them. I mean, there's all kinds of things like that, right? And so Lizzie is sticking her nose in the investigation because she's worried about her aunt, right? And then there's this guy, Max, and he shows up as he actually works for the ranger station, but he is working with Josh to help out because the chief is, I think he broke his leg or something like that, so he can't work right at that time. So Max is helping out. So anyways, and Max is clearly interested in Lizzie, and Lizzie has a thing where she gets around any guy, like she's on a date and things like that, and she can't talk. It's like her mind just kind of, everything disappears, and her ability to function as an adult who can speak disappears. And she's like that at the beginning, Max, but I think she comes around because he helps her with the investigation. Like, he lets her in part of the investigation. So, and I think he does it because he's interested in her, and I think he knows that she gets like that. So it's actually really, really cute. And you know, I think it's I always think these cozy mysteries are a great read, especially, you know, when you're reading through a bunch of really, really heavy subjects and you inject something like that in there, or you've had like an emotional read and then you inject. I like that. I like doing that. So anyways, so we have that. All right. So then the next was an arc I received, which again, I don't want to say too much because it is the 4th book in a series. So it is written by Brittney Sahin, The Best of Us. And as I mentioned earlier, it's coming out on May 15th. I absolutely loved this. Fantastic book. It sits right top tier for me. Finished off the series beautifully, and it is about the Costa family, and there are the 4 siblings. So there is Enzo's book was first one, and I think Anthony's second one, then Isabella's book, and then this is Constantine's book. And this one was probably the longest. So this is a situation where Constantine runs into this kid, Colin, and turns out that Colin is his son. It is from a more or less one-night stand 17 years back with Juliet, who is Colin's mother. Now, Constantine's never forgotten Juliet, and Juliet's never forgotten him, but the situation between the two of them, they basically never found each other, and there are details in there that I don't want to go over too much because that would be giving too much away from the book. But suffice to say, there was like misunderstanding parts there. But so this is him dealing with the fact that he's got a 16-year-old son that he never knew he had, and her dealing with the fact finding the man that she wanted to be able to tell that she was pregnant. And it was an accidental pregnancy. And normally I don't care for that trope very much, but I love the way she wrote it. Obviously, I mean, he used a condom. These things happen, and it did. So what happens right at the beginning is Constantine and Hudson with Isabella, they have to go to a rave because they're following up on some things to do with drugs in the city, that kind of thing. And at the rave, Colin is there. Now, he's only 16. He shouldn't be there. A fight breaks out, and he's dragged upstairs. Now, Constantine knows what's going on upstairs, and he goes up there just in the nick of time, and there's mafia up there, and there's these 2 young men who, one of them is sort of the informant to Constantine. And he gets Colin out of there when the mafia realizes who he is, because Constantine is the Costa family, and the Costa family, nobody basically screws with them in New York, right? They used to be, well, not necessarily mafia. They were the League. His father was, and the League all stems from kind of the Dublin Nights series, which is a series that she wrote before. So you kind of have to read that to understand this one. There is something that happens in relation to Colin. It brings in many of the other people from her other books because Juliet's uncle is Easton, and Easton works for Carter from Falcon Falls. Again, you have to read those books to understand that part. They're trying to get their hands on Colin because they want to get to Easton. That then leads back to Sebastian Renault, who's part of the Dublin Nights series. And So this book culminates in them going after, again, another faction of the, I guess you would say it's the Italian mafia, because it is in, it's not Sicily, but I can't remember where they are, what coast they're off of, but it's there that all this kind of comes together. Wow. Came together with a bang. And I, as usual, I absolutely loved it, because I really do like how she manages to take all these moving pieces. What I also really kind of liked with this one was that as they were working through it, they had multiple theories on what was happening. And each one kind of developed differently and came from different spots. And it was like, yeah, I love the book. So I really like stories like that, because it's very fast moving, but you don't lose track. Like now, I think part of the reason that I don't lose track is because I've read all of her books. So, and I think I've stated before, you kind of do have to start at the beginning. So you sort of have to start with the Hidden Truths, the Dublin Nights. You know, you want to read them in order. The Stealth Ops series, and then kind of like Falcon Falls and Costa Brothers kind of, I think, sort of run perpendicular to each other. So it's like you kind of have to read all of those. You want to know who Carter is, and you want to have read all the way to the end of the Falcon Falls series before you read this one, Best of Us, because the end of the Falcon Falls series is what impacts part of this story. So you have to read all that to do that. So I think that's a bit unfortunate. At the same time, that doesn't mean you wouldn't enjoy this, because there's a lot of great stuff, including, you know, there's spice, just like there is in all of her books. So yeah, really, really good. Say enough. And if you haven't read any of her books and you want to just start somewhere, you could even just start with the Costa Family series right at the very, very beginning. So yeah, that's it for that. So I'm just going to quickly add in, I read one last ebook that I wasn't expected to read. It was an ARC that I had received from NetGalley, and I did read this book. Didn't really care for it. It's called The Confessions by Paul Bradley Carr. Now, it is a book that has... It's about a computer, an AI computer, and this AI computer basically controls people's lives. It tells you what to do, what to eat, what to drink, get up, go to sleep. I mean, like all that stuff. What happens is the computer goes down. There is there's the CEO who is, of course, in charge of this company that runs this computer, and then there is her. I said, like, the guy who's the head tech guy, and he's, you know, he's like a typical nerd who thinks he knows everything. Like, he's pretty typical in the book. And she's like a CEO who acts tough in one case, and then the other side's like, people are always she's paranoid. She's constantly paranoid. The reason the book's called The Confessions is that apparently what happens is when this computer, which is spelt Liam with 2 L's at the front, and it's all capitalized. And I'll get into what drove me crazy about that. But anyway, so this book has Liam sends out billions of letters to everyone confessing things to them that they knew were going on with somebody, and they're like, yeah, somebody bad. It was confessions. That to me was completely ridiculous, okay? Because the way that this was described initially, I'm like, well, but why is there even mail delivery? And who's doing this mail delivery all over the world? And how are these letters getting out so quickly? Like, there was all of these questions, because that didn't make sense. That made no sense to me whatsoever. The other thing that didn't make sense was there were still gas vehicles. There was still cell phones, the electrical in their house still worked. Like there was still electricity. I'm like, well, so what did this thing control then? Like, do you know what I mean? It just didn't make sense to me. So yeah, I was like, I read it, you know, and then as you get to the end, so Caitlin goes looking for this ex-nun who is a PhD, and she is one of the people who helped the founder of this AI chip design the chip. So essentially, Maud, which is her name, is the one who taught Liam morality. And it's this morality that caused him to shut down. So that I found fascinating and interesting. So that was the interesting part of the story to me, is that she made him into her child, essentially. That was basically Liam wanted to die because he had been forced to make all of these unethical decisions, which were all the confessions that were made. Okay. So that part I got, but the rest of it was just, no. And then the very end, the end of the book was just bad. You're sitting there and you're going, what the hell? What was that? Like, that was how I felt about it. To say that I didn't enjoy this would be an understatement, but there you have it. And that was the Confessions by Paul Bradley Carr. It was a Netgalley arc. It is not being released until July 22nd. So, you know, if you like AI. Oh, no, the other thing I want to mention. So as I said, the name of the computer was Liam with 2 L's at the beginning. Don't know what that stands for. I don't even think they mentioned what it stood for throughout the whole book, unless I missed it, which I could have, because nothing about this book stayed in my head, unfortunately. But it was all capitalized. You'd go to a page and it would be capitals, 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 capitals. I found that disconcerting because you're reading through it. So instead of having it just the first name being capital, which is what you would do if you were capitalizing the name of something as you were going through, the entire thing was capitalized. It was like it was shouting at you. And I found that from a tactile, that's what I found that from a tactile point of view, very difficult to read. And so I found myself kind of like having to go back and read things again. And then there were times when I would look at it and it would be like, oh my God, it's like a whole page being shouted at. You know? And I read it on Kindle, but I typically read on my iPad. So it's like reading a full page of a book. And I did not like that at all. So I think that the way that it could be changed is if the author had made it so that just the first letter was capitalized and then the second L was lower, or even, or like the first 2 letters were capital. I don't know, but I didn't like it the way it was. And it made it very difficult to read. So that's it for that. So then we're going to get on to my last 2 books, which is finishing off April beautifully. Yeah, last 2. Which I kept together because Queen of Nothing was the last book I read. I read this a little bit earlier in the month, and then had Dungeon Crawler Carl kind of it fell in between just to break them up a little bit, and then I read Queen of Nothing. So if we were to take the entire series, this was my favorite book in the series. This came second, and Cruel Prince came third. So I liked it the least, but I didn't hate it. I liked it the least. So this one was like top tier for me, and this was pretty close. I think the reason that I liked this one a little bit more, is probably because this one had a lot of moving parts in it, and it moved really quick, and the end and ended with a punch. Okay, like the cliffhanger at the end was friggin' awesome, and I loved everything that Jude went through in this. And this one I found a touch slower. Okay, so because that was part of the thing that I found with The Cruel Prince, was it was really slow in developing, but it was, I think, because it was laying a lot of groundwork there. This didn't have to do that, but I did find certain sections of it kind of dragged a little bit and got me a bit on this one. So, you know, I don't want to say too much because this is book 2 and 3, obviously, of a series. But what kind of bothered me a little bit in this one was the point where Carden went through his change. Kind of sat there and went, huh? But then it sort of made sense at the end, right? Like when the climax came and everything like that. In this book, I think that the way that it ended, like her relationship with Carden was always kind of like hot and cold, right? In this book, a lot of that why comes to light, which I loved that. I thought that was beautiful. And actually where it came from, who told her about Carden and everything, was kind of surprising a little bit in this book. In this one, there are things he does and you think that's like the old Carden, kind of, from the first book. And that was how it ended. And then, but then you understand why when you get to here. What I really loved in this book, her relationship with her twin sister is still strained. I don't think that necessarily has to do with Locke, who her sister marries. I think that has to do with the fact that Jude has to distance herself, because Jude is basically, she stands guard for Carden, who is now the king, right? And so she kind of closes herself off a bit, I think, from her sister here. But in this one, her sister needs her, and she does not blink when Taryn asks her for her help. Like, she really doesn't. And that is ultimately, I think, what you learn about Jude as you go through. Because when I reviewed the first book, I said that Jude's character went through a lot of transformations and became very morally gray. But you find out why. You find out the things that she's trying to accomplish as you go through. And also more about her feelings and why she feels the way she does. And yeah, it's just really, really great. You get a few new characters as well in this book. Some you hate, some you like. Right at the very beginning in the second book, she meets up with someone who was a general, much like her adopted father, Maddox, was. And she ends up, this woman ends up playing a bit of a role later on, which is really great. And I probably shouldn't say this, but I think the only disappointing part was that there wasn't really an all-out war, because that would have been good. Might have made it a lot longer, which is why she kind of wrote around it, sort of. Yeah, she definitely wrote around it, but I can't say enough. It's like, it was a great series, really, really great series. But again, this was my favorite book, was this one. But I can't say too much about this one or this one, because it would give away the whole series. And I really think that if you want a great fantasy series, that this is Fae. You're in a Fae world. So there are a lot of things that are all kind of like new terms and things like that, but it's really well done. And if you want very much a romance that is filled with hate to love, enemies to lovers, but that is drawn out till the last very breath, yeah, read this series. Because you're going to like it for that reason. Okay. So anyways,
those are my last 2 books of April. And I think that's it for April. It was a good month. Like I said, you know, my average rating was almost 4. 3.93 is close enough to 4, if you ask me. And I enjoyed all of the books that I had to read. So that's it for me. Let me just close that up. So I think that what I'm going to do in May, because I am going to have a lot of books that I'm going to read in May, so the likelihood is that I am going to do weekly reading wrap-ups, probably. Because if I don't do it that way, then we could end up with a very, very large video, which again, this one is going to be a large video because I had a lot of books to review. And I think that that's really hard to watch. So I think we're going to do them weekly for the month of May, and we'll go from there. And I will still do a video though, because I do like to do a video kind of towards the end of the month on what the upcoming releases are for June. So I probably will still do that because I do like to do that video. So it might be an extra video that I do, but because I don't really do, typically I only do one a week, but it won't hurt. And so, yeah, so that's it. Now, I really love it if you could like and subscribe. If you've made it this far through the video, then it would be wonderful. I am inching even closer to my 500 subscriber count and would really love it if I could rocket my way through there. I find typically it, you know, sometimes I can get enough subscribers in a week that it can do that for me, and sometimes maybe not. But yeah, if you could do that, I would so much appreciate it. And that's it for today. See you in the next video.